Welcome to the Picture This podcast.
Follow along with us as we talk about faith, relationships, and navigating through college life.
Picture this. You can only have one food for the rest of your life. What is it and why?
So, do you mean like one food item, or could it be like a combination of things?
I'll let you run with what you think.
Okay.
Whichever.
Well, I really like sandwiches, and I feel like you could do a lot with a sandwich.
Okay.
I would be okay with a sandwich for every meal. Personally, I really like turkey sandwiches, so something to do with that. But
Yeah.
I'd be okay with eating that.
With Hawaiian buns and
Maybe.
I would.
I like sourdough.
Oh yeah, sourdough
And
is
like
good.
you can put like avocado or like egg on it, so you can make it like breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
You can make it a breakfast sandwich or just a lunch sandwich. So
That's
it's
good.
pretty diverse.
I thought about this question a bit and I heard it somewhere. I don't know how true it is, but I would do potatoes because apparently they have like all the nutritions that you would ever need. And of course, like the ratio is wrong. So like you're getting a lot more starch than you need, but you can also get everything that you need to live off of. But potatoes can be made so many ways. Baked potatoes, loaded, French fries, chips. So
Yeah, I think I would get pretty sick of that. That's all
yeah,
I could eat.
I know. But then you have all the seasonings you could put on.
Yeah.
So like at Silver Dollar City, there's this one stand and they have potato like I don't even know what you call them.
Spirals.
Yeah, they have like spiral like they're like potato chips, like crisps.
Those are
And
fun.
you have like barbecue seasoning or ranch or whatever. It all tastes. But I love potatoes anyways.
Oh yeah, and you could have ketchup with it.
That's true.
Would you go with ketchup? Because you said only one food, so.
If you get to have the broadness of sandwich, I think I get to have the
Okay. Yeah,
broadness
no,
of.
I was just checking.
Okay.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah. So what this episode is going to be about, it's having a healthy fear of God and what that looks like in our lives, how we live through that, what that means to us.
Mhm.
So I guess kind of an opening question. Well, do you have anything you would talk about before we really get to that?
No, I would say this idea kind of came up because I think we talked about one of our themes last time kind of came up this way, but we just like see it everywhere.
Yeah.
I feel like in all of my classes we've been talking about this, and like the sermon on Sunday was about this. So,
Yeah, I've definitely like seen a few scriptures. Like I went to the joust, like where we kind of like hang out and eat and stuff. And one of my buddies was writing a sermon and like I was looking through the verse. I'm like, oh, that's that. And I keep like I saw that all week. So
okay.
I'm really excited for this.
Yeah.
But man, before one thing I do want to say before we get into the episode, and we might be able to talk about it a little bit later. Um, I I came to my house really late the other day. It was Monday, and I was just going to sleep. It was like 1 in the morning, so pretty late, but just getting to sleep. And then I just see these blue lights flash in my room. I was like, what the heck? And so I like sit up, I turn around, look out my window, and my house is kind of like on the back half of an acre. So we have a really long driveway, and there are like four police cars like on the road in front of my house. And I was like, what the heck? So I go outside. It is freezing. I mean, it was like 25 degrees
It's
outside.
really cold here. We got some snow today.
Yeah. I got an official snow day today.
Yeah.
But we can talk about that later too. Anyways, so I go outside and there's like one car patrolling, there's three just parked, one's blocking our driveway. Apparently there had been like a shooting and I heard like this pop, 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 pop. And I thought it was just a car, but no, like there was like a shooting and your mom found that out and told me. I didn't know.
Yeah.
So that was scary. But I say all this to say I wanted to find out what it was about. So I downloaded this police scanner app on my phone. And like I have a radar detector in my truck. I like listening in or whatever. But this I could hear what they were saying, like radio frequency wise, and I got so addicted. So I was like listening and I heard they were looking through sheds and this and that. I was like, man, this is so neat. So for the past week I've been like driving around with this police scanner app and you heard it today from me and you were like, oh, that's so cool. Elena goes, turn down the music. I want to hear the police.
Yeah, and I think we just kind of sat in silence the rest of the time, but with the scanner on so it would come on and off, which
Yeah.
was really fun.
I really like it. Like my grandpa used to listen to it all the time. And so like the more you listen to it, the more you know like how they talk and like codes and
Yeah,
stuff.
and Springfield's crazy. We have stuff going
Yeah,
on here all the time.
it's really interesting. So there's another side tangent I'm gonna say, but I was on my way to school Monday and I left kind of late and I hear on the radio, EMS fire, everyone report to this address on Pythian. And Pythian's like the road that my school is on. And I was like, what the heck? So I pull onto the street and they are like all just lining the street and they were there so fast. But I'm like, man, this could like save you from traffic and this and this. Like, you know
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah.
So that kind of just got me addicted to it. I think
Yes.
it's neat.
Yeah, I do too.
So, okay, now we can actually get into the episode. And kind of what I want to open with is like, how do you think you can have a healthy fear of God? What does that mean to you?
I feel like really it's just constantly getting to know the Lord more and just knowing his heart and who he is.
Hmm.
So little story. I'm in a children's literature class and we're learning about early readers and so basically what children used to read back in like the 1600s.
Hmm.
And so there's some really interesting stuff we learned about these things they're called chapbooks. And they're like little tiny stories made out of paper.
Hmm.
Um and adults would read them, but children would get them from like fairs for like a cent because it was like the only thing they could read. All they had to read was like a little primer, which I'll talk about that. But they'd read these stories, and they were about like Jack the Giant Killer, and like just like kind of those like old stories that we might be kind of familiar with now. But they read this thing. It's called the New England Primer, and it basically teaches children the alphabet using scripture. So for every letter, there's like a scripture verse, or it talks about like how we're man and we fell short to sin. Like I think
Hmm.
A is like Adam and Eve sinned in the garden is what A is. And you keep turning and you get to the very first story in this book. And it's literally okay, mind you, this is a kid's book.
Hmm.
It's a picture of a man being burned at the stake, a martyr, and it tells the story about this person who died for his faith. And it's like this ink print picture of a guy on fire. Little children were reading this as young as like 3 years old. And so we kind of got into this conversation in class is like, okay, so this, we're talking about the fear of God.
Hmm.
Are children, is this a healthy fear of God that they're gaining from these books? And we were debating like, should children be reading this at this time? Was it really great for them? Because they'd read these stories before bed. And you know that saying, it's like, before I lay down to sleep, I pray the Lord
My
my
soul
soul
to
to
keep.
keep.
I said that every night.
Yeah, and if I shall die,
Before, if I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take.
it was like stuff like that. And it's like, okay, imagine being a child and hearing that. Are you gaining like a healthy fear of God? Like, I feel like that would inflict just fear on me. Like, oh my goodness, if I do anything wrong and I die, I'm gonna go to hell if I don't say this prayer or,
Yeah.
something like that. And I feel like, oh no, that's,
Man, you're like uncovering part of my childhood. I kind of forgot I used to do that.
yes.
I would do that every night. And I feel like, I mean, you saw me recite it just then. I feel like my mind kind of became numb to it for a time.
Yeah.
Like it's just something you say,
Yeah.
you know?
But I just kind of think about in that time period being a little child, and of course back then there was illness and children would just
Mm.
pass away overnight, it happened a lot. But it just kind of gets you thinking like, okay, am I inflicting healthy fear of the Lord? Like I should be in awe of him,
Mhm.
that kind of thing, but not like afraid, like kind of these stories like make you feel like when you're reading through this New England primer, it's like some of the stuff in there is like, wow, children were reading this. How did they view God back then? Because the point of it was to kind of like give children these good morals. They're learning their alphabet, they're learning scripture at the same time. Um, but I don't know, I just thought that was really interesting.
And I'm so glad you just brought that up. Elena came to me with this. She's like, "What do you think the episode should be about?" And I'm like, "I have a couple ideas." And then she goes, "What about the healthy fear of God?" And I was like, yes, I have a lot to say about this."
Yeah.
So, opening up, um, my faith, how it kind of formed, I was like I wouldn't say terrified,
Mm-hmm.
but you said the word like awe of God.
Mm-hmm.
And I was definitely under the assumption of like, I'm here for God. He's my creator. I need to have a complete reverence for him. Like, I better not waste my time. Like, I just need to like worship. He's too great for me to understand this and this and this. And while that's true, I never thought of it in the way, and this is skipping a lot, but he can also be your friend.
Yeah.
See, I only thought of him as my father,
Mm.
but we don't stop to think that our father can also be our friend.
Yeah.
And I think God is the perfect, like, accumulation of both of those things when he
Mm.
needs to be.
Yeah.
And part of that, I can talk about it later, but like, stuff shows up with that in my story that, like, really, when you ask God to reveal himself, he does in
Yeah.
the coolest ways.
Kind of going off of that, talking a little bit more about literature, I think about the Chronicle of Narnia,
Oh,
the
yeah,
Chronicles of
Chronicles of
Narnia
Narnia.
series, and just how C.S. Lewis depicts Aslan
Mhm.
as, he's supposed to be a representation of God. And I think honestly, for that being a kid's story too, it really depicts it in a way like you want to go to him. He is your friend, and you also view him as, in awe. Like, yes, he's this, like the lion. He's
Yeah,
amazing, but I want to go to him, not stay away from him.
right.
Like you're not afraid of him, but also like you need to go to him.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
kind of thing.
Man. Okay, you'll have to forgive me because I don't remember a lot about that story, but I
Oh
know some of
yeah.
the I know like the symbolism and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but but yeah, I really resonate with this topic. I just want to say that again. I really enjoy what we're talking about because I was like again, I wasn't scared, but I just had that reverence.
Right.
And maybe I will go into a little bit of stuff, but like I didn't think that I could be on any kind of like I didn't feel how do I word this properly? God lifted me up more than I thought he would
Mm,
during times.
yeah.
Um, and showed me things like there's a way to talk with God and not to God.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really big bridge for me to cross.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like so often people pray to God for things, and I brought my things to God and said this and this and this, this is what I'm going through. And of course he knows it, but I still said it. But to sit there and be like, okay, God, what should I do with this is something that took a lot for me to say and actually listen because I would say it. And I remember doing it as a kid. I'd say, like, what should I do with this? And then immediately I would just stop and like go do something else.
Yeah.
And that is not what we should do.
Mhm.
You need to sit there and like part of that is silence, part of that is thinking through it, part of that is reading your Bible or like talking to people even. But I would just say it. What do you want me to do? Stop praying, get up and go. You know?
Yeah.
And when you do stop and think about it or any of the other things I said, there are some really cool ways that God can show up.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
I definitely think that as a child too, and even now sometimes I struggle with having that OCD. Like if I do this one thing, then like I'm God's gonna look at me different and like
Yeah,
I'm have to like really like surrender to like I'm not perfect and I you know, we're humans, we're not supposed to be.
right.
You'll hear me bring her up a lot, but I love Sadie Robertson's
Mm,
podcast, Well, That's Good, and I listened to this one episode this week that she did about like defeating the villain in your story, and it's talking about spiritual warfare and how the enemy will use that in our world. And she was talking about Wicked, which I got to go see with my mom. I've loved Wicked since I was little, but there's a couple of things in it. Like there's witches, there's like spells and stuff like that. And Sadie was talking about it. She has a friend who was also actually on Broadway and played Glinda on Broadway. And so she was talking about this and she asked her guest speaker a question like, if I watch like Wicked or movies like that, like, am I like in the wrong? Like, should I stay away from stuff like that? And it's like, it really depends on like how you feel in your spirit. Like, if you're gonna watch this movie and like you're not you're just in the world, you're
If you're
not of it.
convicted, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, I don't know, that just kinda got me thinking about some things, and it's like, yeah, I really love that movie, and
Mhm.
I acknowledge that there's things in there that, like, are wrong and they're evil,
Yeah.
but I'm not, like, reading into it. It's different if you're gonna watch that movie and then all of a sudden you have this, like, fixation on witches and
Yeah.
witchcraft and stuff like that, you know?
I kinda wanna go off of that, and I don't remember the exact verse, so forgive me, and I
Mhm,
might get some flack because of what I'm about to say, but I think, like okay, so I'll be vulnerable, quote, unquote. I listen to, like, rock music,
mhm,
like 80s rock, and some
mhm,
of it has some words or, like, says some stuff that typically Christians wouldn't listen to.
mhm.
I think it's okay to listen to that stuff if you come from that point of, like, knowing.
Yeah,
And again, I don't remember the verse, but it's like, "Don't do what causes your brother to stumble."
mhm,
You know what I'm talking about?
yeah,
So if you have somebody that's like a new believer or something, and you have, 80s rock music with bad words playing,
yeah,
maybe you shouldn't.
yeah, right.
Stuff like that. But I think, like, on your own time, knowing because I just like the music. I do.
Mhm,
It's what I like. And even I think it's cool to listen to that and know, like, some of this stuff is God-gifted talent, even if, like, you know,
yeah,
but I just think it's really cool. And even other stuff, like, I could go on a whole tangent about, like, drinking or this or that, but I think a lot of it comes from a point of perspective, and
yeah,
the verse that says, "Be sober-minded,"
mhm,
I think is the key to,
yeah.
all of that.
And, like, God will use those things, like, going back to that story, Sadie's friend who was on Broadway and played Glinda in Wicked is actually, like, a really strong believer, and,
Mhm,
like, her being in that place, in that time, like, God brought her there, and she was a light to others, to those around her,
mhm,
and I just think it's really cool 'cause I've seen a lot of Christians talk bad on Wicked, and, like, it's just like you said, it's a matter of perspective for
mhm.
sure. Like, for me, like, I grew up with that, and
Yeah.
so it's always just been something that I loved, like, the music from it, but I never, like, read into it in that way, you know?
Yeah. Another thing I wanna say, and this is kinda just, like, way off of that, don't ever use an Ouija board.
Uh,
This is, like, other end of stuff. I just don't entertain demons, and
mhm,
I'll say that very
yeah,
strongly. I love theology, I love to research angelology and stuff. I
mhm,
got really into that, and so, at one point, I got into, like, demonology and understanding how it works, but you need to be really careful,
yeah,
and some people use, like, researching it as an excuse to understand more, and, like, I definitely said that, but you have to be really strong in your faith to be able to research that
yeah.
from a healthy, like, mindset, and if you ever feel like you shouldn't, like, get out.
The enemy, like, you have to be so careful because darkness can just slip in, like,
Yeah.
the smallest of, like, maybe, like, horror movies. I know for me, I will not watch them just because for me, like, it's dark and I can't I don't want that, right?
Mhm.
Um, so you have to be really careful about what you do for sure.
See, I'm not like I actually like horror movies, but I'm also very careful on what I pick. Like, if it's okay, so there's one movie, I forget the name of it, I'm horrible with remembering today, but, it was like a demon possession movie,
Mm,
and it came from a point of Christianity understanding. It was like a lawyer and some interrogation type thing.
right.
It's a popular movie, I just can't remember it, but it's cool to, like it's a cool depiction, but you have to remember that.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Hmm. Moving on, what is something in your life, like, specifically, do you have anything that you're like that changed in your, like, theology to know that you have a healthy fear of God?
I guess kind of what I talked about earlier is, like, you don't have to be perfect, but, like, it's kind of just, like, giving your best for God
Mhm.
and, really just having a sensitive spirit is really big for me.
Hmm.
And also just being in constant communication with God too. You talked about talking with
With
God
God,
instead
not
of
to
talking
God,
to Him. Yeah.
right? Yeah.
But I don't know, I just feel like the older I got, just the more I realized it's not about perfection. There's a
Mhm.
song, it's like I can't remember what it's called, but it's like, "It's not about perfection, performance." Like,
Yeah,
it's your heart for God.
that's good. Yeah. You can go off and talk about works and faith and all that. But one thing I do want to say kind of with that is I know you are more like, there's two terms I use to describe it, and I'm not trying to create division here, but you are more low church and I'm more high church. So when I, like my quote unquote ideal church, I walk in, it's like white marble, stained glass, like pillars, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Really like hymns, like organ type music, stuff like that, traditional, but also a really casual um, congregation. Like you can go up and talk to your buddy Steve about how his weekend was, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's my like quote unquote ideal. And I feel like yours is more walk in fog machine type, you know?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Well, not, I mean, that's just,
I'll let you talk for yourself. How about that?
that's just, I mean, I've grown up at this church since I was 7, but also growing up, I went to Church of Christ. I went
Mhm.
to a small Assemblies of God church. So I've experienced a lot, but it doesn't matter the environment for me. Like, what matters is your heart posture.
Mhm.
And I feel like a lot of Christians, maybe in our area where we live, for me specifically, my church has gotten a lot of backlash
Yeah.
from Christians, which is wild to me. But I think the media puts out a lot that isn't true,
Yeah.
and I don't know why they target my church. I can tell you that there's a really big move of God going on at my church that I have never seen in my lifetime. Um, and so I feel like sometimes that can put people off.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so I do want to say, like, I just know, I know I described my ideal church. That doesn't mean I haven't
yes.
gone to your church. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean I have anything against any church
Yeah.
necessarily. But um, that's just like what I would enjoy the most.
Mhm.
But that does not mean I can't worship. I can't take communion with you. I can't
Right.
take communion at this church. I've been
Exactly.
to Anglican churches. I've been to Pentecostal, Methodist, like all of it.
Mhm.
And actually, something I've wanted to do for a long time was go to different churches.
Yes.
I wanted to sit in the front and get well, actually, I'll say this first. I wanted to sit in the back and like take notes and understand what it's like. And then I wanted to sit in the front and really get into the worship and stuff. And I wanted to do that for a bunch of different denominations and this and that, like just around the Springfield
Yeah.
area. But I've only done a few so far.
Yeah.
Um,
You went to one this past weekend.
oh, I did. I should talk about that.
Yeah, you should.
It's called Sock River and it's a cowboy church. So it's basically in a barn.
Mhm.
It's really cool. You walk in. I didn't even tell you this. Some lady, I did this for an assignment. It's like a worship experience, different kind of culture type.
Mhm.
So you take pictures and write about it. And this lady came up and she goes, "Are you from our college?" I'm like, "Yes, how'd you know?" And she goes, "Oh, a lot of students were here last week with
Yeah.
the same thing." I was like, "Oh, that's cool." So we sat and talked for a bit just
Yeah.
about, but I had been there before because my grandparents went there a few times,
Mhm.
and I really enjoy that church.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was fun because like the Super Bowl hadn't happened yet, but it was that night actually. They got up and one's a Broncos fan and others are Chiefs fans, and they were talking. It was
Mhm.
very relaxed,
Yeah.
and I thought it was neat. But they played hymns. I love hymns.
Yes. We were talking about hymns today in my Pentecost
Oh.
class. We had to do like research on like the backstory of Amazing Grace, and there were a couple others.
I love Amazing Grace.
Yes. Yeah. And so I don't know, we were just talking about that today.
Yeah. So did you talk about like who wrote it and all that, like the
Mhm.
slave ship?
Yes. There were the other hymn, I can't think of it. I can't think of the name of it.
How's it go?
But I don't know. I can't remember it. And the guy, he lost all 4 of his daughters on a shipwreck,
Mm.
but his wife survived. And his name was like Horatio something.
Oh, I'm missing it too.
Yeah. And then
People at home will know.
whenever he went to go see his wife in France, whenever he was on the ship and he passed over that very spot where his daughters died, he wrote this song. Yeah, he's gonna find it now. But
It is well with my soul.
yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, okay, this is another tangent. Look up when you're done listening to this podcast. Look up Wintley Phipps' Amazing Grace. WINTLEY PHIPPS. He is a preacher out of Georgia, I believe, or Alabama, and he's got this really deep voice, and it's just booming. And he gives the backstory to Amazing Grace,
Oh, neat.
and it is just like make me tear up and I don't cry. Like it's just really good. Really good. But it takes like 10 minutes to listen to. So that's that. Um, Earlier I mentioned that part of this came from a verse I was helping a guy write a sermon for. I kind of wanted to read part of it.
Yes.
And it goes back to what I was saying earlier about talking with God
Hmm.
and listening. So it's from James 1:19, hearing and doing the word. You must understand this, my beloved. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, for your anger does not produce God's righteousness. Therefore, rid yourselves of all sordidness and rank growth of wickedness, and welcome with meekness the implanted word that has the power to save your souls. And this is the part that really gets me. 22. But be doers of the word, and not merely hearers who deceive themselves. For if any are hearers of the word and not doers, they are like those that look at themselves in a mirror. For they look at themselves on going away, immediately forget what they were like. But those who look into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and persevere, being not hearers who forget, but doers who act, they will be blessed in their doing. So there's a lot that can be pulled from that. But it says, like, if you look in a mirror and you see yourself and then you turn away and don't understand, you've been changed by God.
Hmm.
Know your purpose. You see yourself. Don't forget what you look like. You're changed now.
Yeah.
Not only that, but don't deceive yourself of what you're hearing. I feel like a lot of people will pray for something that they want and they're deceiving themselves. They're like, man, I really want a new car. And some inheritance check comes in and it needs to go to this and this, and they don't tithe or whatever, it goes to the car. This is just an example.
Yeah.
And that's not blessed. I mean, listen to what God is telling you to do. As soon as you get your paycheck, this is something I need to work on too. As soon as you get your paycheck, ask God, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
finances are a big thing, especially right now as a broke college student.
Hmm.
Ask God what you need to do with your money. And then not only listen, but actually take your faith and do something with that.
That's good. Yeah.
Hmm.
Faith requires action.
Yes, yes. One analogy I heard, this is kind of like faith and belief and the difference.
Mm.
So you can build a chair and you can construct it nail by nail, board by board, and you have your chair. But it takes actual faith to sit in it. And I feel like a lot of people build their chair on God and they're like, yes, I'm a believer. I've been going to church for, 10 years. I know all the stories. I know so many verses. And then they face a hardship and they won't sit in it.
Mm.
Anyways, just kind of like trying to tie that back in. Having a healthy fear of God allows you to listen to what he says and actually act on it. And like, again, you're blessed when you listen and do. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah, that's good. And I just think it's also like, we talked about this earlier, realizing that it's a relationship and he's not just staring down at us from heaven, like waiting for us to mess up. Like he wants us to come to him when we mess up,
Mhm.
you know? Like he wants us to come to him for with everything that we have and that we are. Um, I think one thing too, so I talked about, I think it was last episode, I got in a car wreck and I was really worried about just everything because I wasn't going to have a car. I took it in, found out that it was totaled, which was, oh my goodness, another crazy, crazy thing I was not expecting this year. Um, but I was praying about it and, um, we were able to get enough money back from the car that my mom got a new car and I got her old car. And this
And
car is like
a
even
lot
better than my
nicer.
old one. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's like what a blessing that was.
Right.
And like even though I was like so stressed about it with everything, um, I'm just really seeing God come in and say like, "Hey, I've got this. You need to just have peace with it." But yeah, kind of back to that. Just bring him everything in your life. Like he is your friend. He wants to hear everything. I mean, he knows everything, but he wants us to come and tell him.
Right.
So you might be like, well, he already knows everything in my life, so why would I need to do that?
No, there's a
No.
verse that says you need to anyways.
Yeah, right.
And God delights when you do that, I'm pretty sure is
Yeah,
the wording that it uses.
yeah.
Um, another thing, I have seen like 3 sermons where a pastor does this. We bring our problems to God and then we try to leave with them.
Hmm.
And so the most recent one I saw, he goes, we come to God on the altar and say, God, here are my problems. And he grabs his podium. He says, these are all my problems. Please take them from me. I'm done with them. Thank you, Lord. And then he tries to walk away with the podium. And he goes, here they are. Now take care of them.
Yeah.
But he still has a hold of it.
Hmm.
And we need to actually let go and let God work.
You said there's a church that you've been to, and there's a wooden cross in the front, and people have nails and hammers, and
Mhm.
you get a piece of paper, you write down what it is, you need to give to God, and you hammer it up there physically, like
Yes.
action. And I feel like that's kind of what we have to do is we have to nail it to the cross and really just like leave it there,
Yeah. So yeah, I'm buddies with the pastor there. A giant wooden cross, and there's just a hammer up there and
Yeah.
nails. And people will nail paper, like you said. Sometimes it'll be like cigarettes or this or
Hmm.
that. They just lay it up there.
Yeah.
Another thing that I've seen at church camp, you'd write it on paper, and they had this giant bonfire at the end of the week, and we would go and burn it all. Say, this is like my trouble. This is what I've been through.
It's a really good like physical representation that we need.
Right. Yeah. Just handing it over to God.
Hmm.
Um, on a very less serious note, as we kind of wrap up, I had faith yesterday, and I know you had a lot more faith than me that we wouldn't have school today. We did end up having school today.
Well, we got a late start.
We had a late start.
Yeah.
So normally we have chapel, but yeah, so it started at 11, classes started at 11, and I have an 11 o'clock and a 1 o'clock, and then on Wednesdays I also have a 3 o'clock lab.
Mhm.
So I'm getting ready, and I'm like, oh, I might carpool with you, this. And so get ready, get the email, my 11 o'clock was canceled. Yes. And then I found out my lab was canceled because it's the same professor. He's
Mhm.
like, I can't leave my house. I was like, oh no, that sucks. Sorry. But we were happy with it. Um, and so that way I could actually carpool you because I wasn't going to leave you,
Yeah.
pick you up, get to school. As soon as I drop you off and I walk in my room, I get an email. My only other class that I was there for got canceled. I was like, what the heck? I'm here for no reason. So
Not no reason.
I cleaned my room for room checks and packed, I guess, and now I'm here.
Yeah.
But that's how today went. It's been a pretty chaotic week, and today was.
We might get some more snow days next week because we're getting snow this weekend. Monday, Tuesday look pretty rough too. So
I didn't know that. I hope
it's
tomorrow is a snow day, but I really doubt it.
our school is just so picky about canceling, even when like every public school in the area is closed, they just won't do it. But it was nice for me because that means I don't have to go to like practicum or anything. But
Yeah,
still, I could do without having to go.
right. But I mean, it worked out.
Yeah.
I did have honestly, it was a pretty fun day because I got to school, did all my stuff that I needed to do,
Yeah.
worked on an assignment,
Good.
and then we got lunch
Yeah.
at
At
Brahms.
Brahms.
It was really yummy,
Hmm.
which I was surprised. But it was just a fun little date.
Yeah.
Anyways, I think this was a pretty good episode, and I really enjoyed it. I'm excited for next week too, because I got a couple things in the back of my mind. But thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next week.